Base power in Vanguard has always been a vital factor when it comes to guarding. In older, more caveman formats, people deliberately rode 10k base vanilla grade 2s to force their opponents to call boosters, or units that gain power, in order to let their 9ks hit. There's also mechanics like cross rides that increase base power as a continuous skill that works on the opponent's turn, and there are also skills that reduce base powers as seen as stuff like Seal, Reverse Dayusha, Deleters, and Dust. In D-Standard, one specific deck took this idea of stripping away power as part of its gimmick. This included power from triggers and just from skills. Drajeweled, one of the decks introduced in the Wheeldress era and the main vanguard of Michiru Hazama in the anime. Throughout the time of Wheeldress's airing, the deck underwent really interesting evolutions to where it, alongside Leon and Youthberg, became one of the best decks at one point. Likewise, all three of them starting out as trial decks. Well, not really good trial decks actually. The main gimmick Drajeweled was trying to sell was Soul Blast 4 different grades and increase or reduce your opponent's power to 1, negating things like triggers and carrying some of the funniest rolling interactions as a result. But despite being one of the 3 new trial decks that was accompanied with set 6, it only got its proper support in the following set and arguably had a worse start as compared to Leonard and Youthberg, where instead of having one of the most important abilities to potentially plus and feed soul, we were given this pretty miserable rearguard skill I guess, and maybe an extra persona in that case. The rod line stays pretty much the exact same in future builds, with Jewel Core, when rode upon, calls itself to the rearguard circle, and being either a 13k swing or a booster for free, and then returning back to your soul. Jewel New on our hand threatens in our soul charge, I guess, but importantly, he feeds soul and draws to refund the write-up cost. Main deck inclusions at this time, mind none of them would probably carry over to future lists, were Ling, Sairi, Raider, and Fergus to fix the grades in your soul. While they're not really good cards in general, you just needed something to burn your CB on. Brainwash Thriller at this point in time was also a consideration for both a general soul charge and to push numbers. But the main disadvantage at this point when looking at the Dark Seeds pool was just needing the Soul Blast 4, where there were cards that require you to have a specific soul count and sort of spelled anti-synergy. Mind that at this point this was also a free attack deck and was competing against other decks that have had more time to grow support. But now in set 7, we have the proper stuff now, so you just throw away the old Drajeweled stuff. Set 7, also the format where this thing dominated the format for quote-unquote drawing 2 and getting another drive. Drajeweled as a Vanguard, staying mostly the same, other than the additional Soul Charge 2 and Draw VA Soul Charge different grades, but the more important 2 inclusions being Rockager and Falcate. Falcate being a booster to help set up your soul, and Rockager as a recenter that takes advantage of the power reduction. Of course, this would also somewhat introduce like CB issues, but I don't know, you just killed him or something. Other cards in the set included Power Gem to build advantage and Risto Galer as a form of fixing your soul while simultaneously introducing removal for the deck. In set 9 introduced Clean Sweep as a way for mass removal for the board and just a huge as hell swing, and Imposa that came as a magazine promo and came insanely late for England, but importantly she functioned as in the restandard that's free opposed to Rockager, but played alongside to make the 5 attacks easier to achieve, and that she also fetches your grade 2 greater cards from your soul. Also you can't do 2 Imposa at this time, you can only do 2 Rockager or 1 Rockager and Imposa. At this point, there was 2 ways the deck could have went, either that it focused more on the OTK and just straight up killing your opponent, or actually in a sort of sustained game plan with active recursion via Falcate and Imposa, and an advantage engine with Power Gem. Bushiroad could have potentially leaned to more sustained sort of game plan with Drajeweled, but in set 10, it introduced the mass units, with Drajeweled finally getting new form. Well, not really a good one. Drajeweled Mass moved into the game plan that banks on killing your opponent as soon as possible, with both the going second persona power, the faster access to crit, there's also removal too, which makes Risto Galer and Clean Sweep pretty redundant. There are also pretty big glaring issues the new build had, such as forcing you to run more grade frees where guarding is close to non-existent because what the hell is a draw? A package that needs you to pray to God that you either hard draw or soul charge your pieces to then grab with Imposa, minus you have to also see other pieces as well to make things work, an additional counterblast cost if it wasn't expensive enough. No, we're not talking about how Cranium Birder needs to swing and see the Soul Blast 4 to countercharge. At this point for Drajeweled, it was pretty clear that Bushiroad did have an idea of which direction to take the deck, but it ended up being pretty miserable to pilot. So after his arc, they ended up putting Michiru in a coma because they probably couldn't afford his voice actor anymore. It took a while of just stuff not happening for the deck with set on set on set until set 13 Ignis. Initially announced as a TCG exclusive, similar to Urga, Red Zorga, Greedo Mask, and they're probably gonna take back their word on saying that. Drajeweled Ignis, accompanied with the rest of the support, introduced probably the biggest revamp the deck has received. Enough for it to dominate a good chunk of Set 13's format. Not only having triple drive from grade 3, Ignis self-supplements itself with soloing in 2 cards from drop to fixed grades, and if 4 grades are hit, it becomes a pseudo persona ride with 5k on top. Next, the biggest adjustments made to the power decrease, even though it is 5 different grades, is that you can substitute a grade of Soul Blasting or Drajeweled, making the condition easier to accomplish, especially with the Soul in too. But the big meat of all of the skill is to retire back row, gain a crit, increase or reduce your opponent's front row power to 0. Despite looking funny on paper, changing this 1 to 0 actually is a game changer for Drajeweled, as changing it to 0 also changes the intervals in guarding. Take for example, something swings at you for 15k, if you were at 1 you could guard for 15k into 15,001. However, with guarding at 0, it now requires you to dump an extra 5k shield to hit 20k total. At one point, during early reveals, I remember describing this card as a literal war crime. It was crazy how self-sufficient it was and just how much it did if you just rode Ignis, which is probably one of the reasons why it's shown so brightly along with the Big 3 and maybe Warfist. As for the other cards in set 13, includes Sagan to make your entire soul a toolbox and is able to turn into a booster, which actually rolls back to the entire recursion aspect that old Drajeweled had, given that you have Ignis' soul into. Varpula, pretty much allowing you to turn anything into an Umposa, while also drawing, given that you have an Ignis in hand. More importantly, Sagan and Varpula are strong due to how quote-unquote free the cards are, due to not actually costing real resources besides like calling them and refunding themselves. Draco Kid, while not being an amazing card, is able to dig for your Ignis, or draw if you already have one in hand. Lastly, there's Noctizerio, while not being direct support, is also an insane card with being able to refund right-up ditches, fix soul for Ignis, and to beat refundable commit with just a counterblast. Out of all the promos found commonly, is Valkyrie should have filled in the role of being both a huge beater and able to soul in cards, and probably be the best target of taking advantage with Varpula's restand. She also has the grade 4 skill which lets you draw a card. Often some lists would opt towards running Forbidal alongside Ristle Galer as a form of front row retire, which is alright, but it really didn't gain power or push for any hand advantage. When the game moved into the DivineZ era, the deck just seemed to slow down, especially in terms of support, with Tizcar being the closest thing to fill in that hole, but in set 2, Bifrons actually became that sort of second win for the deck, especially as an early commit to set up off your top 3 and basically just being better than whatever Draco Kid was. Oh, there's also set 4 with Compositive Freaks. We do not talk about what they did for Compositive Freaks. Overall, Drajeweled had a pretty interesting peak after plenty of sets of mediocrity early on, and probably isn't the last we'll see of the deck with Michiru coming back for DivineZ Deluxe. That'll be all for Drajeweled. If you enjoyed the vid, please do leave a like, comment, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe. Also, happy 2025 everyone! Please look forward to my future projects this year. Other than that, I'll hope to see you all in the next video. Until then, peace!